Ever since those super secret document leaks back in September of 2023, there's been rampant speculation about what exactly Microsoft is cooking up for their future Xbox consoles. In those documents, we saw glimpses of a digital Series X, a new look Xbox controller that kind of looks like it's wearing pants, and a sort of new Series S. Just as I made up my mind that the digital Series X was never gonna see the light of day, we got a report from Exputer saying that not only is it real, but that it's going to be launching this summer. Funny how in just a couple of weeks we went from, oh my gosh, Microsoft is exiting the hardware business, there's not gonna be Xbox consoles because they're going third party, to, whoa, Xbox might be revealing too many Xboxes. While this is just a rumor for now, the documents we saw back in September tentatively put the release date for these new consoles in 2024. Tom Warren over at The Verge also has said that he expects Xbox to release a controller similar to the ones that we saw in the leaks sometime in May. So in today's episode of Xbox Ready, we're gonna dive into everything you need to know about this new hardware lineup coming from Xbox. And remember, if you want to stay Xbox ready, make sure you subscribe to the channel and set your notifications to be alerted whenever your boy Ray posts a new video. Let's discuss. This video is brought to you by Manscaped. That's right, I'm teaming up with Manscaped once again. Y'all know how I do things. I believe firmly that if you take care of your outward appearance, it will have an effect on your inside, make you more confident, and just make you awesome at life. That's why Manscaped is part of my daily grooming routine. And the Manscaped 5.0 Performance Package has everything I need to be feeling awesome throughout the day, even if I spend 8 straight hours playing Baldur's Gate 3 or Pal World or Halo, whatever. Things like the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. This thing has 3 different guards and features skin-safe technology, so you can get a close shave without messing up anything else. The built-in LED is perfect for lighting up areas that traditionally don't have a lot of light around them. The lithium-ion battery can last for up to 60 minutes, but don't worry, if you ever get low, that LED indicator will tell you, hey, you gotta recharge this. And just because Manscaped loves you so much and cares about your grooming routine, on top of the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, they're throwing in some other stuff as well, like ball aftershave and deodorant. This stuff is perfect, especially if you're out all day, on your feet all day, you're super active. It keeps things fresh, and I love staying fresh. But that's not it, y'all. That is not it, because as we know, Manscaped is all about grooming your entire body, not just certain areas. And if you have pesky nose or ear hairs, no one likes that stuff. In the Performance Package, you also get the Weed Whacker 2.0 to eliminate all that. And if you buy the Performance Package now, they'll even throw in a free gift of some nice Manscaped boxers with a special jewel pouch for your boys, and the Shed 2.0 travel bag, so you can take all of that stuff on the go. Get 20% off the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra by going down in the description and using my link to buy. You'll even get free international shipping. Thanks again to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. First up, let's dive into what you need to know about the digital Series X. What is it about this thing that has everyone talking? Well, first let's start with the basics. Going off of what Exputer said, this thing is apparently going to launch sometime in June or July with a chance for it to be delayed. This sort of makes sense to me because we know that Xbox likes to have their Xbox Bethesda showcase at the beginning of June. And yes, the focus of that showcase is to show off their upcoming games. We know that they're not afraid to show off new hardware. That's exactly what happened last year, where at the end of the show they were like, boom, surprise, a Black Series S with a full terabyte of storage. And even if they don't end up releasing the digital Series X in June or July, they can handle it like they did the Black Series S, announce it at their June showcase, and then release it a couple of months later. There's also potential for this digital Series X to be cheaper than the ones that we currently have. The digital X prototype that we saw in those document leaks, codenamed Brooklyn, that was priced at $500. It was the same price as a standard Series X, and at the time that raised a lot of eyebrows. But you have to remember, Brooklyn was slated to have 2 terabytes of storage versus 1. If they decide to skip that and just go with 1 terabyte for the digital Series X and drop the disk drive, of course, then I could potentially see it being cheaper a la the digital PS5 that we got at launch. That would be super confusing to me though, especially if it's a full $100 cheaper, $400 instead of $500, like the digital PS5 that we got at launch. Like, why buy the Black Series S for $350 if you could just spend $50 more and get a way better console? A lot of people, a lot of fans, I see them taking this a lot further. They're gonna be like, yo, Microsoft, why didn't you release the digital Series X instead of the S back in 2020. Let's move on and talk about the design of this thing. The original report from Exputer didn't have any any images because they were like, we can't share those due to the secrecy of this project. Apparently showing pictures of this thing going way too far, but they can talk about everything else. But according to some mock-ups and from other sources, this thing is going to be white. I think that's actually awesome because especially if they keep the green interior on the vents on top, that's really gonna make the color pop. Also, if it has no disk drive, this thing has the potential to be smaller than the current Series X. Ixtasis claims that other improvements that were shown to him are an improved heatsink, which is awesome because this thing runs hot. And also an upgraded Nexus card, which is what exactly? I had to do a little bit of digging because the words Nexus card, that means nothing to me. But it seems to be something to do with connectivity and Wi-Fi. This actually lines up with something that we saw in those document leaks. On the slide detailing all of the things that were going to be added to Brooklyn or this digital Series X, they mentioned that it was going to have improved Wi-Fi connectivity and be compatible with Wi-Fi 6E. That would be a significant improvement because currently on the Xbox Series X and S, they can only go up to Wi-Fi 5. Of course, you gotta have a fancy router that will give you access to Wi-Fi 6 in the first place, but if you can swing it, you're probably gonna see some significant improvements, especially if you game wirelessly. The real advantage, if you do have a router that gives you access to Wi-Fi 6 or 6E, is having access to that 6 gigahertz frequency. Not a lot of people are gonna be on that. They're gonna be on 2.4, they're gonna be on 5, so there's not gonna be a lot of interference. According to the internet, it's also going to double your available bandwidth, raise the ceiling to your max internet speeds, which could in theory lower the latency whenever you're playing games online. Of course, when you're reading about internet speeds and different packages and stuff, download, upload speeds, it always sounds more awesome on paper than it ends up being in practice. If this digital Series X that's reportedly going to be coming out in the summertime is anything like what we saw in these documents, it's also going to have a USB-C port on the front instead of a USB-A. Brooklyn was also rumored to have a new standby power mode that uses 20% less power, and that's kind of cool. I mean, it's not the sexiest feature, but I mean, it would potentially blend some of these cool elements that you get when you have your Xbox in standby mode, like remote play, while also throwing in some of the benefits that you get when you're in energy saving mode. Other than that, not too many differences between the standard Series X that we have and this new digital one. So let's move on to the bit of hardware that I'm most excited for, this new look controller codenamed Sibyl. In the leaked side for Brooklyn, it says that with this console, it's going to come with a new immersive controller. So there's a chance if this white Series X gets released sometime in the summer or whenever, it's going to come with a new controller. But it's one thing to see pictures of this thing and another thing to truly understand its features and how it's going to elevate our Xbox experience. One of the things you'll notice right away with Sibyl's design is that it feels familiar. That's because the chassis looks pretty similar to what we're used to with a standard Xbox wireless controller. Its color scheme is also something that we've seen before. It looks very, very similar to the Elite Series 2 Core that was released a couple of years ago. But the question on everyone's mind is this controller wearing pants? Is it a panda? Not a lot of people are very crazy about the design. I'm not too bothered by it. It doesn't particularly excite me, but a lot of people I just see just absolutely roasting it online. There's been some debate about whether or not this is going to have the same dimensions or ergonomics as the controllers that we have now. But in the slide, they make it a point to draw comparisons to what we have now in this new controller. They say same ergonomics as Merlin, which I assume is the code name for the current Xbox controllers. And they also mentioned that it has the same layout and activation forces. The last bullet point is interesting to me. It says that it's going to be available in Standard Edition, Limited Edition, and Xbox Design Lab options are to be expected. So potentially, if you're one of those that absolutely finds this color scheme and design disgusting, chances are we're going to have different color options, whether it's through the Design Lab or through limited edition runs. I mean, if you're a fan of Xbox, you also know that they are crazy about releasing a bunch of different colors for their controllers, like one every single month. The only major difference between this picture and a standard Xbox Series X or S controller is the lack of a share button, or at least an obvious share button, because the one in this picture looks more like the thing that you would find on an Elite Series 2, the button that you press to change your controller loadout. But even if they did away with the share button for this next controller, I don't think a lot of people would miss it. It just doesn't seem like something that a lot of people are using. For me, it's just kind of there, and Xbox seems to have caught on to this because they're literally letting us remap the share button to something that we'll actually use. Next up, let's talk about this controller's battery. If this controller comes out, whenever it comes out, it'll have a feature that Xbox fans have been waiting for a very long time. A rechargeable, swappable battery. No longer will PlayStation bros be making fun of us, cracking jokes, saying things like, shut up before I slap the AA batteries out of your controller. And unlike a DualSense, you will be able to swap out the battery if it ever dies. They also mentioned this new controller is going to have modular thumbsticks. But what do they mean by that? Does this mean that we're going to be able to replace the thumbsticks if they ever get stick drift like what we see in the DualSense Edge? Personally, I'm not sure that's going to be the case because, at least in this picture, it doesn't look like there's an obvious detachment and replacement system. When you look at the DualSense Edge, you can tell right away, like, oh, there's little clasps on the bottom of the thumbsticks. I can see how you'll be able to swap them out, even if I've never done it before. I'd say it's more likely that these thumbsticks are going to be more in line with what we see in the Elite Series 2. You swap them out, they're magnetic, you can change it for like a long stick, a round one, a concave one. I guess technically that would be a modular thumbstick. They also mentioned this controller is going to have improved longevity and just general build enhancements. I personally would like to see Xbox explore the possibility of adding Hall effect sensors into these new controllers. We're starting to see Hall effect sensors in a lot of third-party controllers like the GameSir G7. They're magnetic, they don't rely on friction to tell the direction of where you're trying to go or look in game, which makes it harder for them to develop stick drift. If Xbox put Hall effect sensors in their controllers, that would establish them as like the controller to beat. It's already the go-to for obviously anyone on Xbox and for a lot of PC players. They could continue that dominance if they go the extra mile, even if it has to be a little bit more expensive. In this slide, they say that this controller is going to have VCA haptics that double as speakers. Now, first off, what are haptics? I know a lot of these words that they're throwing around, you're probably like, I kind of know what that is, but I don't really know, I just kind of have the gist of it. Well, haptics, at least from our understanding as a modern video game society, is basically what we see in the DualSense on PS5. Basically, it's the evolution of rumble tech, where the settings were pretty limited. In old rumble controllers, you had a motor that can do a light rumble, and then one that can do a strong one, and then together they made an ultra strong one, a super powerful rumble. New haptic tech uses something called voice coil actuators, which is a coil and a magnet that can vibrate depending on how the power is pushed through. And because they're a lot faster than old rumble controllers, there's a lot more precision in the vibration depending on the sensation that they're trying to replicate in game. Like in Stray, if you play on PS5, you can feel throughout the controller like the little pitter-patter of the cat's feet, or like its little purrs. In Helldivers 2, if you're about to run out of ammo on the machine gun, you'll start to see the haptics and the triggers like kind of like sputter out, and they're not as rhythmic as they were when you had a full clip. But what are the speakers for? Why do I need speakers in my controller? Well, if they play it like the DualSense, it could just add another level of immersion whenever you're playing. Like in The Last of Us, or The Last of Us Remake, or The Last of Us Remaster, take your pick. You find little audio journals and you get to know the world and its inhabitants through what they say and record. But in The Last of Us Remaster, that's the one I played, when you pick up an audio journal, it plays through the speaker on your controller. So it's literally like you're picking something up and then you can hold it to your ear like you tore it out of the screen or something. This controller, again, if true, is apparently also going to have an accelerometer. Accelerometers, by their definition, are devices used to measure the acceleration of an object. In gaming, like in controllers, they're used to detect the orientation and the movement of that controller. Now, an accelerometer on its own doesn't really do much, but when you combine it with a gyroscope, that's when things get interesting. A gyroscope is a sensor that detects and measures orientation. So when you combine the two, you get the switch effect, the Joy-Con effect, You have this in the DualShock and also in the DualSense. You will literally be able to move things and interact with the game based on the position of your controller. There's no mention of a gyroscope in this slide for Sebille, but why would you put an accelerometer in it and not a gyroscope? Xbox is already implementing gyro controls in some cloud games, so this just seems like the logical next step. And speaking of cloud gaming, it doesn't look like Xbox is giving up on it anytime soon. Sebille will be a direct-to-cloud controller, whatever that means. This could mean this controller is going to function a lot like the Stadia controller, which connected directly to Google's gaming servers for a more direct connection, versus connecting to whatever device you were using and then having the input sent over the internet and then that information sent back to your device. I feel like when it came to latency, a lot of people had a lot of positive things to say about the Stadia controller. And Xbox Cloud Gaming, one of the biggest problems I have with it is that controller input delay. Anything that they can do to minimize that, I'm all here for. If you haven't already figured out, I'm personally more excited for this new controller versus this digital Series X. I think the white Series X looks cool and all, but there's still a couple of things on my mind. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me why they would release this and then turn around a couple of months later and announce the next generation of Xbox consoles. On top of that, fan backlash to another digital Xbox console has been pretty notable, and it makes it seem more likely that they're going to move away from physical games. Phil Spencer recently came out and said, "No guys, game discs, physical games, they're still a part of our strategy, but when things like this pop up, it's hard to take that at face value." There are separate rumors saying that this digital Series X is going to replace the current one that we have now, much like the Slim replaced the launch models of the PlayStation 5. I don't know if they are, but if they do that, they absolutely need a detachable disk drive like we see with that PS5 Slim. I know that they were working on the patent for it like 2 years ago, so if they decide to go that route, they have to give their players an option. And finally, by the end of this year, we're potentially going to have 5 or maybe even 6 Xbox consoles, depending on if they decide to release Elwood or not. And listen, I love Xbox. I got the Xbox Pillow, I got the console, I got the controllers, I got all sorts of stuff, Xbox, but for me even, that's like 2 or 3 too many consoles. But that about covers it for everything you need to know about this new hardware reportedly coming out later in 2024. If you're looking to buy a new Xbox, whether it's your first time or you're looking to upgrade, you might want to wait till June when we have more information. Or if you absolutely hate all of this new Xbox hardware coming out, maybe you're sitting there just so glad that you decided to keep your current Xbox console or sell it. I don't know. No matter what happens, I'll still be here talking about everything Xbox, and I hope to see you in the next video.